And what I'm going to do very fast is to give you an idea of what FAPESP is, and basically, because of FAPESP, you're here. So in the School of Advanced Science on Modern Topics of Biophotonics, I wrote it down, so okay. I'm going to describe some features of FAPESP, okay? So, but first, let's, especially for the audience that was not born in Brazil. I was not born in Brazil, but I've been here a long time. Let me tell you about São Paulo, okay? São Paulo is a state in a large country. We about 42 million people. Brazil is 210, give or take one, okay? Or two. So we are a percentage of a large country, but this state produces about 32% of the Brazilian GDP and more than 43% of Brazilian science. Unfortunately, that percentage is increasing. We are producing a larger percentage of science. And we graduate a lot of PhDs. Why do we do that? It's because we have a stable source of funding for research. We have several strong research universities. And certainly, this state produces more science than any country in Latin America. When I present this in other countries, they don't like it, but it's true. And we have lots of business university joint research for a variety of reasons. The science and technology system in the state of São Paulo comprises lots of entities, lots of companies, and about 70,000 researchers that are not only in the universities, but are also in the industries of the state of São Paulo. So you can look at that much faster than I can describe it. So take a look. We have 6 public universities, 3 financed by the state, 3 financed by the federal government, and that's a very different situation from the rest of Brazil, where essentially 100% is financed by the federal government. And that makes a big difference. We have other public institutions of higher education, technology school, private institutions, research institutes, private research institutes, and a lot of very innovative companies. So that's the distribution of researchers and all that. So of how much money are we speaking about? If you take a look at the percentage distribution of the almost 13 PPP billion investment in 2017, 54% is invested by companies, 27% is invested in higher education institutions, and the rest is research funding agencies and research institutes. It's a lot of money, and I may say that it's worth it. However, if you take a look at the distribution of the investment in Brazil, in São Paulo, and in Brazil without São Paulo, you see a large difference. And the main difference is because the state expenditure is a larger percentage, and the private investment is a large percentage. And this distribution explains in a way why this state is attractive for both Brazilians and foreigners to think about research. If you compare what the state of São Paulo invests in higher education and research with other states in the country, you will see that this graph is in a sense, a tragedy, because we in São Paulo invest a percentage or a quantity of money that is between 8 and 100 times larger than any other state in the Union, especially because our universities are financed by the state. So we reach FAPESP. Why do I go so fast to FAPESP? Because without FAPESP, you would not be here. Okay, very simple. FAPESP is the state foundation for research, and we are a very, very peculiar institution, which is very interesting for mainly one reason. We only have one mission. If you take any institution that has a number of missions, it's very difficult at one time, at any one set time, to say, where is that institution going? With FAPESP, there's no problem. We have one mission, and we have to support research in all fields of knowledge. We are funded by the state of São Paulo with 1% of all tax revenues, and we receive proposals from you guys. All proposals are peer-reviewed, and I'm speaking of a universe of about 30,000 proposals a year, and we have about, and this is statistics, okay? It takes about 2.5 months to make a decision, but then that's statistics. And you know that there are damned lies, and there's statistics. So, mind you, we take about 2 months, 2.5 months in average. Doesn't mean that any proposal will be decided in that period. In 2016, our budget was about 540 million PP dollars, and you can read it faster than I can describe it. We finance fellowships, academic research, university industry joint research, and research in small businesses. As I said, taxpayer in the state of São Paulo finances FAPESP. Why do we evaluate everything we do? Because we want that our investment, which comes from the pockets of every taxpayer in the state of São Paulo, produce some impact. And when I define impact, I'm defining intellectual impact, I'm defining economic impact, and I'm defining social impact, and it can all be summarized by saying, when you have an idea that increases well-being, society, when you have an idea that leads to new business, when you have an idea that originates more ideas, you're having impact. We want that for our investment. If you look at fields, these numbers are 2018. In 2018, we invested about almost $700 million PPP, and most of that was in life sciences, biology, all of biology and medicine, natural sciences, engineering, human and social sciences, and some in interdisciplinary science. And we have several types of research grants. We have grants for regular projects. That's a 2-year project, a maximum of about $100,000, 100, would take. It depends on which exchange rate you use. But for 2 years, we have thematic projects that, of course, comprise a more important, potentially important research project that cannot be finished in 2 years, so it takes It may take 5 years. We have a very interesting Young Investigator Award that receives money for investment in research and a scholarship that can last from 2 to 5 years. And we are increasingly financing research, innovation, and dissemination centers that tackle a more, if you wish, substantial research challenge that connects with basic science and applied science and diffusion. And we also finance engineering research centers for applied research together with companies. And we have several investment categories, and that graph summarizes, in a sense, what we define as science policy. If you take a look, scholarships not associated with research projects, that is, students that are going to do research in a lab that it's not directly financed for that research line by FAPESP, is sort of decreasing. The regular research project, that's a 2-year project, it's taking less space than it did in 2001. And what is increasing is funding for advanced research. That's thematic projects or centers that have a 10-year scope. That is, we are increasingly betting on more advanced and more courageous scientists. How do we evaluate? How do we analyze any demand for funding that comes to FAPESP? So there's always a girl or a guy that sends a proposal that arrives to an area coordinator. We have 100 of those working for free in FAPESP. It's very easy for FAPESP to get an area coordinator to work for free for us, because generally there's no researcher in the state of São Paulo that is not financed by FAPESP. And when you receive a grant, you have to sign and say, if FAPESP asks for help, I will help, and I will not charge FAPESP. So it's easy. Everything goes to peer review. Of course, an undergraduate fellowship needs half a peer from the state of São Paulo, and a $10 million grant needs international evaluation. Oops, then the result goes back to the area coordinators that can send it back for peer reviewing, or can say to the research proponent, come on, give us another try, write a better project. But if the project is approved, it has a good peer reviewing. If the area coordinators think that it makes sense, it goes to another level of analysis. Now we have a smaller number of researchers with more experience that take a look at the process for each project. And if it survives, it goes to the scientific director, who makes a decision. And that decision may be referred by a technical council, and if everything goes right, it goes to the administration, and we finance the girl or the guy with money. The success rate in FAPESP for any project has been luckily decreasing. Why do I say luckily? We cannot simply observe our universe. We have to look outside. And if you take a look at what is the success rate over the world, you can see that it varies from about 10% to 25 to 30%. So we are arriving to about 40%, which is still higher than the average in the world. And we know we cannot go down from that at this point, because we're here, we're not there, but we're increasingly asking people to be more bold and to obtain more impact of what we finance. In 2018, we approved 80 thematic projects. Since 2013, we've approved 11 engineering research centers, and that's an important fact, because these centers are financed, I would say 20-20-40, 20% FAPESP, 20% a private fund, and 40% the university, because the university pays the salaries. So that's a lot of money that has to be taken into account. And these centers are, in a sense, some of the jewels of the crown, because they're producing incredibly good basic science, and at the same time, the companies that finance part of the effort are financing more and more because it's convenient for the company also, so it's okay. We finance several projects. We've approved about 54 Young Investigators Award, and you can read whatever is there. As I said, we publish more than any country in Latin America. And if you want to think, is it worth it? Do we have intellectual impact? This is one way to show it, instead of showing numbers. We've made the cover of the most important journals of the world, with several papers in different fields. We are clearly showing that the history that collaboration with industry is only for the benefit of the capitalists may be true, but it's also true that the number of papers in collaboration with industry is shooting up. We know that we can produce impact with photonics. We know that this is just a sample of the startups coming from one university. I'm not going to show those from my university because this university would be ashamed, but it's okay. We have social impact. This is a very important paper by a center, the Metropolitan Studies Center, that drives part of the public policy. Take a look at the difference between the quality of education and the public health. Many people say the public health in Brazil is terrible. I would say that these numbers show clearly that public education is worse. And we are increasingly betting on international collaboration. And I would say that it's difficult to see it, but we have agreements all over the world. And we never sign an umbrella agreement if it's not raining. And this is an important fact from our foundation, because many people, especially in underdeveloped countries, and very much so in Latin America, sign umbrella agreements. We agree to do everything. And then you look at that a couple of years afterwards, and nothing has happened. We don't do that. We sign agreements with places, and we issue a call for proposals at the same time. And as we can predict, the impact and the number of papers with international collaboration has increased. And actually, papers with authors from the state of São Paulo, the average impact is now higher than the global average. Now, this is an important message. We want Brazilians and good scientists coming from abroad come to São Paulo. And we have things to offer. For example, this Young Investigator Award has brought more than 1,400 young investigators to São Paulo institutions. Many of them come from abroad. And every time we announce a position, this is announced internationally, and of course in Brazil. And it's an open competition because these grants are attractive for any scientist in any part of the world. We also never ask for a passport for a young investigator or for a postdoctoral fellow. We want the best scientists to come to Brazil and basically prove to society that the amount invested in science in the state has enough intellectual impact, social impact, and economic impact to make it worth the effort. So these are the features of a postdoctoral fellowship. You can be Brazilian or foreign. You can get money for support. That's our success rate. And there is where you can find the opportunities. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Hello there. First of all, thank you for the very informative lecture. I must ask kind of a polemic question, if I can call it that, but I think it's very important and needs to be addressed. Right at the beginning of your lecture, you mentioned the fact that São Paulo has a... Are you hearing me all right?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Right at the beginning of your lecture, you mentioned that São Paulo has a very strong leading position when it comes to Brazilian scientific production, and that leading position is actually getting stronger over time.
I beg your pardon?
What?
I didn't understand the last.
Oh, you mentioned that
Yes.
São Paulo has a
Yes.
very strong leading position and whatever, and that leading position is actually getting more strongly defined. You know, São Paulo is becoming more of a leader in scientific research produced in Brazil. And I just want to know how much of that is actually due to some sort of outstanding success and outstanding performance of FAPESP, and not actually on the other like research funding institutions on other states actually spiraling down.
Enough.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I sort of get it. There are more components to that, okay? Average intelligence in a population is average. So when we produce more science, it's not because, or better science, it's not because we in São Paulo are more bright or intelligent. It's totally different. The problem is that in terms of the Constitution, we have a state foundation to finance research since 1962. And this makes a tradition because the Constitution of the state is written such that we constitutionally, we, the state, constitutionally have to support research with a certain percentage of the taxes, okay? And we in Sao Paulo respect the Constitution. FAPESP was responsible for increasing, expanding this idea throughout Brazil. Without FAPESP, the other states would not have a state research foundation. Now, every state in this country has foundation. However, for us, a constitution is the law of the land. For many states in Brazil, a constitution is a simple suggestion. So the problem is investment. The society in the state of Sao Paulo is so strongly connected with higher education and research that this state lost a civil war in the 1930s. And the reply of the ruling class at the time was very simple. If we want Sao Paulo to be the engine that drives Brazil again after losing a civil war, we will create a university. And that's 1934. And then in 1947, the Constitution of the state wrote that we should have a state foundation for research. So, yes, it's FAPESP, but it's also the relationship between the society of the state of Sao Paulo, higher education, and research. Did I answer?
I agree with basically everything you said, but I don't think you actually understood my question. The thing is, as you said, every state in Brazil has a research funding institution like FAPESP. And FAPESP may very well be the first one and most traditional one and all that. But what we are actually observing is that in Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, Goiás, these research institutions, these research funding institutions are quickly spiraling down into financial ruin while FAPESP is just kind of staying afloat.
Wait. I couldn't agree less with the word staying afloat, okay?
Excuse me, I didn't understand what you just said.
No. It's because we're scientists, okay? So we have to look at the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Staying afloat means you can drown at any moment, right?
Yes.
That's not the financial situation of FAPESP. Now, it's not only Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, and Goiás. It's all over Brazil, okay? And not only that, but the federal government has cut the financing of the National Research Council by more than a big percentage. So the CNPq, which is the National Research Council, does not finance science today. FINEP, which is another funding agency for infrastructure, cannot finance research today because they don't have funds. So we are in a very complicated situation where research is not important at this moment for the state, not for the nation. But in Brazil, there's a dissociation that doesn't happen in Sao Paulo.
All right, I think that answer is satisfactory. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your satisfaction.
Thank you very much for this talk. Yesterday, we had a discussion. Well, I'm not sure if it was yesterday or the day before, but we had a discussion about the benefits of having a very productive relation between the academic sector and the private sector. From the approach of FAPESP, how will you define the best platform in order to promote that relationship?
Very simple. If you want to define science policy, you take a look at the money. Okay? What is the percentage devoted to basic research? What is the percentage devoted to applied research? what is the percentage devoted to our relationships with industry. At this moment, the percentage devoted to our investment, which is very productive with industry, is about 10%. And we don't think that it has to increase much. Probably we have to be better at evaluating projects that are going to have a great impact. But we have to maintain our investment in research-initiated ideas, and we have to maintain our investment in applied research not connected with the private interest. So when I define science policy, I'm looking at the investment. I'm not doing any theory. And look at the data, okay? We are extremely enthusiastic at all the investment we've made in relation with industry because it's partnership. But we're very, very sure that we can't increase that percentage by much, or else we'll sacrifice the other part. Did I answer? Good.
So I was hoping to go back to the previous topic a little bit. You were showing the success rates and how you were hoping for them to go down, showing that FAPESP is actually looking for better research. But I was wondering how much of that is actually FAPESP being more strict, and how much of that is a consequence of national funding agencies not being able to support research and then more researchers going after FAPESP?
It's almost impossible to separate those things, okay? We have a policy, and we want to finance more the better science. Having said that, you're absolutely right. Many researchers that were financed by the National Research Council have lost or have not received any money since 2015, 14. I was the president of the CNPq, okay? So I know, give or take, what I'm saying. So both things happen at the same time. But we know we cannot go down further because that would really be negative for science in the state of São Paulo. You're right.
Anyone?
Any other questions?
Chega.
Thank you. So in terms of scholarships, what's the first step you consider in an application, for example, for a master's or a PhD? So what's the first step in an application?
What is the percentage?
So the first step.
For a master's?
Yeah, how do you evaluate?
How do we do it?
Yeah.
We analyze the project. Basically, we're interested. See, I mean, remember the first thing I said. We're a foundation that supports research. So we analyze the quality of the project. So a master student has to send to FAPESP a project for the proposed research. And the main thing that we want is for that project to be good, bold, feasible.
So after the project, what's the next step? Is it like in the application, the transcripts, or the?
Oh yeah. You have to send the right papers, okay? And it is all in our website. It's www.fapesp.br, and there's an English version in that site. So first we analyze the project. If the proposal doesn't come into FAPESP with all the papers that we require, we don't analyze it. Okay. So, but you go into the computer, you put your things in, and if you tick the right boxes, you know what the boxes are, you have to send everything. You have to read what is required. Please, girls and boys, read, okay? Because then nothing happens in between and we can analyze the project. And then after the project is analyzed, that's it.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
questions?
Cabo, no.
Yes, I just wondering if FAPESP prioritize Brazilian applications, student, postdoc, Brazilian application like in
No.
any other country?
No.
Or
Our
doesn't-
priority is the best science.
Okay, thanks.
That doesn't mean that we don't have programs, for example, for the Amazon region, or programs for the biodiversity in the state of São Paulo. But our priority is the best science. Because we believe that with the best science, you can have social impact, economic impact, and intellectual impact. Okay? No, that's the last one. I have to leave, come on.
I'm gonna be fast. So thanks for the presentation. My question is, what's the metric you use to measure the social impact of this investment in
Okay.
research?
See, I mean, people all over the world are worrying about that point. It's not a problem of São Paulo, FAPESP, but this is being discussed all over the world. One thing I'm going to say clearly, you cannot use one metric, because depending on what you're investing in, you have to adapt your metric to the subject. It's one thing to analyze what the Center for Metropolitan Studies is doing, and a totally different thing is to take into account the effect of our program on biodiversity on the public policies for land distribution in the state of São Paulo. So what I want to say is that basically, when you present a project, you have to define your objectives. And those objectives give you almost directly a metric to analyze your impact. But you can't use, say, a square cubic metric for everything.
Any other questions?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In the name of the organized committee, we really want to thank FAPESP because you are here because of FAPESP. FAPESP is sponsoring this whole school to bring the students, the professors, and all the speakers. So thank you very much. And also, we do have 2 postdoctoral fellowships that is from FAPESP, specifically for our biophotonics lab. So this call is open. So I hope the ones that get interest and come to Brazil, we do have 2 postdoctoral fellowships.